I'm just letting you know that the last co-host was a big crowd pleaser, and I just don't know if you can live up to that hype. Hi my lovelies, it's Rebecca Rogers. Welcome back to my channel, and today, not only is it apple picking day, but our co-host is...
Avery Rogers.
Last week, my adorable cat Vixie joined us for Bad Apple Day, and you guys said, hey, if we're gonna have guests anyways, why not have our friendly neighborhood lawyer man?
Is that what I am?
Yes, that's what they call you. We've never really had guests on Am I the Bad Apple before, and we'll see how you guys like it. But if you've never joined us before ever, you're probably like, what is this crazy lady talking about? On Am I the Bad Apple, people send in submissions of situations that they don't know if they acted appropriately or not. They want to know if they're the good apple, the bad apple, the crab apple. So we will read the stories, we will talk about our thoughts, what we think, and then you guys will let us know in the comments whether you agree or not. So without further ado, let's get started with this week's episode of Am I the Bad Apple? Let's go apple picking! Apple number 1. Am I the bad apple for banning alcohol at Christmas? My husband's family really likes to drink. Every holiday includes multiple bottles of wine and numerous cocktails. I hate drinking. I've never drinking. My father was an alcoholic, so I think it's childish if you can't have fun without alcohol. This year, I'm hosting Christmas, and for a change, I decided since it's my house, no alcohol allowed at all. We're all getting so much older, and it's time to grow up and stop that nonsense. My husband's sister called to ask what she could bring, and apparently she saw a recipe for Christmas martinis that she wanted to bring. I stopped that real quick and told her about my no alcohol rule. She didn't say much, but must have told the rest of the family, because some of them started texting me asking if I was serious and saying that it's lame, but I'm not budging. Now, it turns out my husband's sister is hosting an alternate gathering that almost everyone is choosing to go to instead. That is so disrespectful. All because I had to spend one day sober? My husband told me he talked to his sister and we're invited to her gathering and that we should just go and stop causing issues, but I won't. This is so rude. Now my husband's mad because I'm making him stay home and spend Christmas with me, but it was my turn to host and I chose to not have alcohol. They could have dealt with it for 1 year. So, am I the bad apple? You don't have to tell me your ruling. What are your thoughts?
On whether she's the bad apple for wanting to host or canceling alcohol.
Yeah, she was gonna
so
host.
Canceling their Christmas.
Yeah.
So she's the Grinch.
She's the Grinch. But why does that make her the Grinch, in your opinion? I'm not saying I disagree with you, I just want to know.
It could go both ways. Let me hear your thoughts first and let's see how we go.
I've said this in another episode. I think it was my stories from Santa Claus last week. There's nothing wrong with people that don't drink, you know? Like, you don't drink. A lot of your family doesn't drink. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I do have an issue with people who judge others for that. Like, it's not your business. It's not your issue. It's not your body. Like, mind your own business. I don't understand the people who take it upon themselves to control what other people do. Now, if it was something like smoking cigarettes, no smoking cigarettes in the house, that I feel like would be more understandable because that's like actually impacting the house, you know? Like, I have asthma. That would bother me if we were in close quarters. I would feel my lungs tighten. That would mess with my health. That's something that you could say, okay, we can't do that in the house, but I wouldn't be able to stop someone from doing that outside. You know, you can't control that kind of things, like everyone's recreational activities. That's not, you can't do that. Which if they do get rowdy, like, okay, ask, hey, can we not get wasted? In my opinion, I don't think that you can just tell people, oh, you're not allowed to drink. Even if you bring your own, no. And it's not like it's a medical thing. Like, yes, her father was an alcoholic and those kinds of things, you know, that can be a problem. But even when you're around people who are recovering alcoholics, everyone in their lives don't just stop drinking. What do you think?
So it sounds to me like she's trying to steal Christmas. I mean, she's come down from the mountain. She's brought everybody, tried to invite everybody into her home, right? But nobody wanted to come. They wanted to celebrate down in Whoville with all the other fun people. I think she should have been a little more understanding and just kind of accepted the way they were and then hosted them over, and if anything got too crazy, etc., maybe she just tried to talk it out, you know?
And what's weird is that, you know, no one has a problem with her hosting. They have a problem with the fact that she won't let them partake in what clearly is how they spend time together. They like to drink together. It's tradition, you know, that's what they do. They don't have a problem with her hosting. They have a problem with her controlling what they can do during Christmas. And they're like, okay, if we can't drink, you can still come to Christmas, but we're gonna go have it somewhere we can do the things that we wanna do. But like my biggest problem is she's like, this is childish, so we all need to grow up. Okay, but let's come to my house where I get to control everything that you're doing because I don't like X, Y, Z. Like that doesn't make sense to me.
It seems like she's got a vendetta against the alcohol part.
And again, there's no problem with people who don't drink. Like Avery is my DD anytime we go anywhere. There's nothing wrong with that.
Designated doofus.
Facts. But it's when you start not only judging other people for doing something that you might not do, and then also trying to control them, like that's what makes you the bad apple, in my opinion. So I vote bad apple. What do you vote?
Christmas is canceled.
Bad apple, both of us. Let's move on. Apple number 2. Am I the bad apple for taking my niece to court over a coat?
Sounds like my kind of story.
I, 28 female, have a niece, 16 female. She's my only sister's only child. 2 years ago, I married a very wealthy man, 34 male, and because of the pandemic, last Christmas was my first with my in-laws. My mother-in-law gifted me a coat that was worth more than $20,000. I saw her wearing it once and asked her where she bought it. She said, if you like it, it'll be my Christmas present to you. I didn't know how much it cost. I mean, I knew it was expensive, but I thought maybe $3,000 at most. I was visiting my sister last January when my niece saw it and Googled the brand and showed me how much it really was. I didn't even want to wear it after because I was afraid of ruining it. Last week, I wore the coat while visiting my sister. While I was putting it back on to leave, I felt something go splat right on my back. Then my niece started cackling and the smell of paint hit my nose. I was so pissed. And my niece wasn't apologetic at all. Her mom screamed at her and said she was grounded. And then she said that she would pay for the dry cleaning. When I got in my car, still in shock by the way, I got an alert that my niece posted a reel. It was her doing a prank on me and she said, I'm gonna hit my aunt's $20,000 coat with a paint-filled balloon just to see how she reacts. I saved that video on my phone and I sent it to her mom and told her that a week's grounding is not enough. My sister didn't reply, but I did see that my niece took it down and it didn't even have 5 views by then. The next day, I found out my coat can't be saved. So I called my sister and told her that her daughter has got to buy me a new one. Well, we got into an argument. She said that they're not going to be paying for it and that if I wanted a new one, I should get my husband to buy it. I think they should pay for it. I mean, they can afford to. In my personal opinion, they should sell my niece's car and use that to pay back my money. We didn't reach an agreement, so I told her that I'll be suing, and I reminded her that I have a video of evidence that her daughter not only did it on purpose for online clout, but knew exactly how expensive it was. People in my life aren't objective at all. I mean, I have some calling me a jerk, some calling my sister a jerk, and some are so obsessed with the price of the coat that they're calling me a jerk for simply owning it and wanting a new one. So, am I the bad apple? All right, Mr. Lawyer Man, I want to know what your thoughts are in general.
Well, I think the people got it right. I think she's going to be a grab apple. It wasn't her fault. She didn't do anything, etc. So it's hard to blame her for anything that happened with the coat. She didn't even actually buy the coat. It's hard to say, hey, you people over here, I know this is expensive and it's $20,000 for a coat, but you messed it up, so I'm taking you to court. And I know I didn't buy it, but...
But she asked how to just pay for it and they refused. You don't think that the niece or the sister should be responsible for buying another one?
I mean, I do, and if we were looking at it from a legal perspective, she's certainly responsible. She meant to do it, but...
Right.
I mean, is it practical to have someone buy a $20,000 coat?
Is it practical to go out of your way to ruin a $20,000 coat?
It's not, but how old was the niece?
16. It's not like she's 8. She knows better. If she's old enough to drive and have a car... I mean, you have to think, this girl in 2 years will be old enough to vote for the President of the United States. She knows right from wrong.
I mean, you're talking about a 16-year-old.
Right.
They mess up cars, they mess up apartments. Even you're talking about adults who can vote. College students that are 20, 22 years old destroy things that are expensive all the time.
Yes, but it's not usually like a,
look, I'm gonna destroy this for clout online.
like a lot of times it's a, oh, I was irresponsible because I'm a new driver. Oh no, I got into an accident. Fender bender. Oh, I didn't know that metal can't go in the microwave, oops, my bad. Like, it's usually irresponsible accidents, not a,
Y'all wanna go mess someone's day up?
I think you're giving people way too much credit.
But even with the devious licks trend with the kids in the bathrooms, they were still responsible for all that. And not all of them were teenagers. The kids that would rip the toilets and the sinks off the walls, they were responsible for that. Their parents were, I hope, were responsible for that.
I know, I think you're proving my point though.
Yeah, so they have to be responsible for it.
It's not that they're not responsible. She did it. I'm not saying she didn't do it and she meant to do it. What I'm saying is kids make mistakes.
Right, and they have to
make
learn
really
from them.
bad decisions. That's right, and I don't think having her pay $20,000 is the right retribution.
What is the right retribution?
Going to court seems a little extreme. I mean, that kid's never gonna have to pay for anything, any part of that. Even if she lost her car, etc., the parents are going to have to pay not only for it because they probably purchased the car, but then they're gonna have to take her around everywhere. You're making the parents pay over and over again. It's not the kid that's gonna learn the lesson.
Well, the parents raised that kid.
You could be Mother Teresa with Gandhi and your kid would still mess up.
I mean, yes, I do agree, but I think that, like, yes, while the parents would also still suffer for it. First of all, like, your children mess up, they're minors. You raise them, you're responsible for them. But also, I can't think of anything other than you will pay this coat back, whether it be we're selling the car, or you'll have to buy a car back, or this is coming out of your college fund, or this is coming out of whatever. Like, for me, that seems very fair. Like, I'm of the opinion that if you're going to have consequences for kids, teenagers alike, that the crime has to fit the punishment. I don't think, oh, no TV for 2 weeks because you ruined a $20,000 coat. First of all, that's not severe enough. $20,000 is some people's yearly salary. First of all, the kid doesn't understand how much money that is. She has no idea. Second of all, she doesn't think that she's gonna be responsible. Third of all, it's just become like a,
well, it's not my problem.
I don't like that.
Which gets me back to my point. You're just making the parents suffer, and that is an excellent point. She doesn't know how much money that is. The average person is not gonna be able to just fork out $20,000. That's a lot of money.
And she's right. I'm for sell the car and use that to pay for it.
I mean, okay.
You don't have to agree with me.
I don't disagree. It's just I know how much $20,000 is too.
I know.
And the average person, just even if they can afford it, that's a big hit.
See, you always give people more of the benefit of the doubt. I'm very much pro consequences, but I think that a lot of that comes from me teaching kids of this age and seeing what happens when they don't get consequences. And I think that a lot of people that don't either have teenagers or don't teach teenagers, I think it's more about, well, they're kids. And I notice even just in regular everyday life, whenever I'm like, oh, this kid did this or blah, blah, blah on TikTok or whatever, and you're like, well, they're only 14. And I'm like, yeah, I taught 14-year-olds. I know how old they are. But I think that's where our opinions are just different.
But to be fair, I see the 30-plus-year-olds, the big adults,
right,
that make the same or worse mistakes on a daily basis, and you kind of have to think, where are they coming from? I can certainly see that someone who is 14 and has no experience whatsoever and hasn't been in the real world yet, because once you hit that 20 to 25 range where people start learning, what life is rather than, I don't have any responsibilities, and even if I have responsibilities, it's, to survive this next day of school, or what the average person has to do that's young, and you see the 30-plus-year-olds doing the same things or worse, makes you think a little differently about the ones who maybe haven't had a chance yet.
But do you think that if they actually earned consequences for these kinds of things when they were 16, they wouldn't be making those decisions at 30?
Hard to say.
Because this girl went out of her way. It's not like it was an accident. If it was an accident, I might think a little bit differently. She planned out this whole video for social media. Like, we planned this one out. She planned out, this is my make or break for social media. I'm gonna be an influencer. I'm gonna ruin this $20,000 coat to become an influencer because it's funny. And I think it's funny. And I understand that this is expensive. I understand it's $20,000.
And I think
funny.
I think you just hit the nail on the head. I'm thinking she was like, big-eyed dream. Hey, if I mess this up, then this could go big. Something could happen good for me, and I can be like all the people I see on TV.
I think that the consequence is she should have to pay for the coat. But you might not agree. Like, I think that the girl is completely justified in going to court. Like, if this was a stranger, if it wasn't her aunt, it wouldn't even be a question. It's only because of, oh, but I'm your niece, I'm your sister, that they think that they can pull on her heartstrings and be like, well, we're family, we're allowed to abuse you this way. And that's something else that I say on this channel a lot, is that just because people are family doesn't mean they're allowed to use and abuse you. If they were strangers, it would be no question, that would be justified. For me, like, I'm gonna go completely good apple, because that's ridiculous and not fair. And why should the husband pay another $20,000 because your kid can't respect other people's things?
I mean, I'll say good apple too.
You don't
because
have to.
I don't disagree with you. I'm saying everything you're saying is correct. And
You
I
said
think
crab
she shouldn't
apple.
have done. Well, I can just see the other side where the girl had no clue and now she's making the parents pay for it, essentially, is how I'm looking at it. But we'll go with good apple for this one because.
Well, no, we each have our own scorecards.
That's right, but later on I'll disagree and I want to be mad.
Apple number 3. Am I the bad apple for making my father-in-law uncomfortable? My father-in-law's made a few comments in the past about me feeding our baby. Our son's had formula occasionally due to supply issues, and my father-in-law is very, just pick one about it. Before we went over, he called my husband to tell me that he didn't want me nursing in any family spaces because it makes him uncomfortable. So that means anytime I have to feed our child, I have to go to the bathroom or the guest bedroom or somewhere else in the house. I just agreed because I didn't want any judgment. But when I got there, they just kept repeatedly arguing with me about why I bothered to breastfeed when my son obviously likes formula better. I got upset, but once again, I just let it go and asked my husband to have a word with them. So I was already uncomfortable and the baby kept getting hungry and I was constantly going up and down the stairs, getting super frustrated, just trying to feed my child. My mother-in-law and husband were smoking outside and my father-in-law was cleaning up in the kitchen. The baby got hungry, so I decided to just quickly try to feed my son where I was, as none of them were present and I didn't want to go up the stairs again. My father-in-law happened to walk back in the room and kind of groaned and asked me, what the heck are you doing, before leaving to go complain. My mother-in-law came back in and yelled at me for breaking house rules and doing something I knew would make other people uncomfortable. They called me selfish and they asked how I'd feel if they just walked around naked, as if it's the same thing. I was pretty upset and my husband did his best to mitigate the situation. I called my mom sobbing and she offered to pay for an earlier flight for my son and I, but refused to pay for my husband as this was his parents. And from her perspective, he didn't do enough to support me. I ended up taking the offer because I felt horrible. I mean, obviously this situation just made it worse, but my husband isn't overly angry. He just told me I shouldn't have broken their rules, which feels really childish. I thought I was right and that they were being jerks, but then my dad said that they had a point and a right to be angry as it was their house and they laid down the rules. My mom told him to quit playing devil's advocate, but now I'm really not sure. So, am I the bad apple? I have strong opinions on this one, and I totally get that not everyone's gonna agree with me. And that's okay. But I find it really weird when people try to sexualize moms feeding their kids. That's weird. Like comparing it to like, well, I'll just walk around naked. I hate to compare to animals because like I don't mean it that way at all, but like, do you know how many videos I've seen on TikTok in the last week of like,
Oh, my dog had puppies and it's so sweet. Look at her nursing her puppies.
and like they have videos of it and it's cute and everyone's like, oh, it's a beautiful thing, it's natural, it's motherhood. And I'm not saying that people should be doing the same with moms nursing, but I'm saying, why are we sexualizing women feeding their kids and making it like a gross taboo thing? They're feeding a child.
I'm assuming she's covering up, etc. And it's not as bad as they're making it sound. But they did have a compromise where she just had to go into a different place.
But they weren't in there.
There's no way that kid eats as much as she's saying.
I don't know, I don't have babies.
A
I don't know.
6-month-old baby needs to eat like 6 times?
I don't know, I don't know.
I don't even eat 6 times.
I do think you have a point that like, she's like, oh, I'm constantly going up and down. I don't know how much
All she had to
babies
do was
eat.
go to the bathroom.
Why should she have to go into a toilet where her kid is eating? Like, that's gross.
It's inconvenient, but there was a compromise.
The guest room, I'm not as upset about, but you know that when people leave the toilet up, if they flush it and the towel's hanging there, I won't even use that towel, because that's gross.
We're getting into the weeds. I'm just saying, they had set out, there was a different spot. They said, hey, we're fine if you go do it in this designated area. That's the compromise, and we won't have any issues, and she didn't want to do it.
I get that. It just bothers me in general that they had to. Like, it's not even like this is a random stranger. This is their grandchild. Why are they trying to bully her into feeding their kid a different way? That's weird. Usually the judgment comes from people who give formula. That's very strange that now the judgment is like on the mom who's breastfeeding. I've never heard of that before. I think it's weird that they're trying to mom shame her for breastfeeding. I think it's weird that they're so uncomfortable with their grandchild eating. And I get they had the compromise, and you're right. She did agree, even though I don't necessarily like that she had to. If we were to ever have a kid, if you allowed someone to make me feel gross for feeding our child, oh, I would be pissed.
I mean, I feel gross sometimes when I eat. But as I do have Baby Yoda socks on, so I am an expert in babies.
Oh my goodness.
I don't think they have a problem with the grandchild. If it were just thinking logically, I think they have a problem with the wife, and there have been issues that are outside of that. And I think that's where this problem is stemming from, just looking at it from a person perspective.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I think they compromised, and that she should have followed the compromise. Now, I don't think she's bad for doing what she needs to do, and I don't think she's bad for breastfeeding, but she didn't follow the rules. I also think it's a little excessive to have flown out on Christmas when she agreed to stay with her husband, etc. If we just get down to the brass tacks, she made a compromise, she broke the compromise. Does that not at least count for?
No, it does. I just don't like that she had to make one. I also don't like how she allowed her mom to make it the husband's problem. He went to go have a word with them. He talked to them. He tried, and I don't know the details of like how hard he tried, but I don't like that the mom was like making it worse and like stirring the pot by like, he didn't do enough, and so I'm not letting him come early. He can pay for it, and I'm gonna pay for you guys. Like, I think that was also kind of
Well, you know how it is, especially when you're married, etc. People live together long enough. The families kind of get into things they shouldn't, or stick their noses into whatnot.
Yeah, but my mom would never exclude you like that.
No, but you know, what I'm trying to get at is there are situations where it's a husband and wife kind of thing where you should have done this, or you embarrassed me for that, and the person is in a situation where either they feel awkward or they didn't notice, probably just a misunderstanding, or he was with his family. So you also have to know that he's been comfortable doing the things with them for however long, and it was just a situation where he's like, what do I do?
So I originally was gonna go good apple, but you reminded me that she did agree to the compromise. Again, even though I don't feel like she should have had to make one, but I will go crab apple because I can admit that she did agree to, hey, I'm gonna do XYZ so that to keep the peace. And then I also, again, I don't like how she let the mom stir the pot and like throw the husband under the bus like that and then just left the husband for the holidays.
Well, I think the husband is probably a situation where he could have done more. Because it is his family. She shouldn't have had to take up for herself either if it was something that was justified, and he agreed. It doesn't sound like they got in an argument about it. It sounded like he agreed.
But it said that he went to go have a word with them.
But I think with the totality of the circumstances, so you're looking at what she agreed to do, which I don't think is that big of a deal, but the way that they reacted and kind of got into a fight about it, I think that makes her the crab apple, and then just taking off. We talked about consequences earlier. She's going to have to deal with the consequences. It's not like next time this isn't going to come up.
Yeah.
And now she's made it that much more difficult on both herself and her husband. So I think she was a little selfish on the back end of that too.
So you're going crab apple also? Look at us matching. I thought you said you were going to disagree with me on one.
Oh, it's coming up.
He doesn't even know what the stories are.
Nope, I've already decided.
We have no idea. Apple number 4.
Disagree.
Am I the bad apple for getting my stepsister and her family banned from Christmas? I have a daughter, Elena, 6, and my stepsister, Jess, has a daughter, Hattie, 5. Me, my husband, Jess, and her husband, Paul, are all staying at our parents' house over the Christmas period. For context, Paul arrived the day after the rest of us, very late at night because he does shift work and worked late before driving to our parents. Paul has a history of yelling. He yells at his daughter, Hattie, quite a lot in a way that I would describe as quite vicious. We've all been made very uncomfortable by Paul's outbursts, and more than once I've had to bite my tongue because I think his conduct is unacceptable, but him and Jess are the parents and it's not my business. The morning after Paul arrived, the girls were playing in Elena's room at about 10 a.m. The adults were all downstairs getting things ready to cook except for Paul because he was sleeping and my stepdad was out at the store. Suddenly, we heard Paul screaming. Again, Paul has issues with yelling and screaming at his daughter, but this particular episode sounded bad, so we all got up and went to go see what was going on. Before we can even come up the stairs, my daughter runs down sobbing, saying that Paul shouted at her for waking him up. My husband was livid and went upstairs to deal with Paul while I calmed my daughter down. I knew it would be absolutely impossible for us to be around Paul after what happened, so we were probably going to be leaving. Jess said that was ridiculous, that Paul probably just got annoyed and was tired and everything would be fine, but I said no. Nobody shouts at my child and remains on speaking terms with me or my daughter. Paul should know better than to be acting like this with other people's children. When my stepdad came back, we told him what happened and that we would be leaving because we refused to subject Elena to be around Paul after what he did, and we don't trust him to not overstep his boundaries like that again. My stepdad agreed, but he said it would be unfair for us to leave since Paul was the problem. My stepdad called Paul and Jess down and said that they had to go, that they weren't welcome on Christmas or even until after we had left. Paul tried to defend himself and said that the kids should have just been quieter, but that really upset my husband. Paul got nervous when he saw my husband get mad, so he half-heartedly apologized. I don't believe a word of his apology, and my stepdad reiterated that Jess was welcome to stay, just without Paul. And Paul had to be gone within the hour. Jess started crying and said that it was unfair, that my stepdad was choosing me over her, and he was a horrible father. Then she started getting explicit with her words, so I left the room with Elena, and the next I saw was her and Paul going back upstairs to pack, and they left without saying goodbye. Since they've been gone, every couple hours I'm getting texts from Jess saying how I've ruined her Christmas and her relationship with her dad over 30 seconds of bad judgment. I don't think I created this situation. I mean, it was my stepdad's decision to throw them out. I offered to leave. I also think Paul made the bed that Jess is lying in. All he had to do was come downstairs and ask us to quiet the children down or pop his head in and ask them politely. He just had to not scream at them. Nevertheless, I do feel bad that Jess is stuck in the middle and that Hattie won't be seeing her grandparents on Christmas because of this. Did I overreact? Would Paul apologizing have been enough? Was I the bad apple?
I mean, I think this one's obvious. So, bad apple. Paul is going straight to the naughty list.
Oh my god, I thought you meant that the other lady was bad apple. I was like, what?
No, I knew I'd get a reaction out of that. I mean, she didn't do anything and then she offered to leave. Kind of odd that the biological father for Jess is just like, yeah, we hate you, get out.
Well, he didn't say that to Jess, he told Paul.
I know, I think they don't like Paul. I think that's what it's
I think that is, well, you have to think that if him yelling at the stepdad's grandchild is obvious enough for everyone, he probably does not like Paul. He probably realizes that Hattie is not treated well. I mean, if he screams at his child like that in front of everybody, it makes you very concerned about what happens when everyone isn't around. That's always the scary part of things like that. Like, if you're that comfortable screeching at your child to the point that they're sobbing in public around people, what are you comfortable doing when people aren't watching? And I guarantee you that the grandfather has thought about that and gets very concerned and nervous about that. And it's one of those situations where I've never been in a situation like that. I have this one, like, he's very nice to me. But I've known women in really unfortunate situations where it really takes them a while to realize that what their husbands or their partners aren't doing is very extreme and unacceptable. And sometimes it's very hard for a parent who loves their partner to really understand what's happening, but the people around them see it and they see the abuse and they see the warning signs and the red flags, and it makes them very, oh, they're acting up, bye, get out of my house. I mean, I think I probably would have done the same thing.
Yeah, it sounds like they don't like Paul. He sounds like he has a temper. I don't really have that much more to add. You kind of hit it all. I'm not sure they mentioned abuse, etc. It sounds like he just likes to scream and likes to hear himself yell, which is just as bad.
Right, and we definitely don't want to just assume, oh, he's probably abusing her. Because again, the OP was very clear that the screaming makes them uncomfortable, but didn't allude to anything else. We don't want to like put that label on a situation. Remember, we don't just make up facts and say, oh, this is the case, so we're not gonna do that.
Let me rephrase that. I think what is actually going on here is that Paul has kind of an issue with himself, is what it sounds like, because it sounds like he likes to bark but doesn't have a lot of bite, because you can tell with the part of the story where the OP's husband gets angry, he immediately backs down. He's just like, no, I don't want any kind of problems, don't mess with me. He likes to intimidate people, especially the
Yes.
younger people, just by being loud and acting big.
Yes, and I agree with that to an extent, but a lot of times, and this comes from all of the Criminal Minds that I've watched, a lot of people who are intimidated by other adults who have those kinds of issues usually feel big and bad when they do get to gang up on a kid, which is a problem. So I'm going good apple. You're going good apple also?
I don't see where she has done anything,
Heck
so
yeah.
there's no other. Wait, I disagree.
No, you can't do that. You said good apple.
Okay, good apple it is. I guess I'm stuck.
Okay, I have to think back. So we have a lot of combination of apples. Like we got a whole diverse bushel going on. We need to get some kind of decorative apple basket for the floor.
Yeah, and some plushies.
We have one bad apple, one crab apple, and 2 good apples. We would love to know what you guys think. Did you guys agree with us? Did you guys think of anything that we didn't think of? I really liked having someone to bounce ideas off of. So if you liked me having a guest, Avery will probably come back. It's not like he's going anywhere. This is
If
our
I have
house.
to. I think I'm overdressed.
But we're still like in the process of moving. We're still getting life situated. So hopefully next week we'll have the mic set up. We'll have the sound absorbing things set up a little bit more. We just didn't want to delay the episode again. I know 2 weeks ago y'all were not having it. I almost just dropped my computer. But let us know down in the comments what you guys thought. If there are ever anyone that you want me to have come over and be a part of, whether it be Avery or my brother or friends or maybe
Pixie.
or maybe when my influencer friends come to town, they can join me for an episode. If you guys want, of course. If you guys like this, this is new. We're trying things out. Let us know. We hope that you guys have the best holiday season. Just like I said last week, whether you're celebrating Hanukkah or Christmas or Kwanzaa or not celebrating anything at all, any of those combinations are perfectly fine. But whatever you're doing, we hope you have the best time with your family and friends that you possibly can. And we hope you get to drink eggnog, whether it be the cold store-bought eggnog or the homemade warm eggnog. Oh, that's the best.
And all your hot chocolate has marshmallows.
I hope to see you guys again next week. I love you so much and thank you for hanging out with us. Bye, my lovelies. Mwah.